then Ronaldo! Balotelli, Aguero! It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent. Here's Messi. Away from 2, 3, 4. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
The Football Drop Podcast.
So yeah, we've got Graeme with us. Graeme, thanks for joining in.
Pleasure, guys. Pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, how's it all going? You looking forward to the match tonight?
Yeah, it's a strange one, I'm not sure how everyone in our industry feels, but when it's which is 24/7 at the minute, looking about football, talking about football, writing about football, the love of the game is stretched somewhat. But obviously England, and that's probably from watching Middlesbrough a lot as well. So yeah, I don't tune into every second of every live game, and that's during the season as well. I'll tune into the good ones, and again, because I have to endure Middlesbrough for most of the season, that takes up that takes up a lot of my frustration. So yeah, I'll be watching England obviously tonight. Again, having to endure England at the moment. I mean, it is trying like watching Middlesbrough at times. So yeah, I'll be doing that. Yeah, but obviously my mind will still be on transfers, and it's been a busy day and thinking about what we need to do tomorrow. It's already thinking about tomorrow and the rest of the week, and who I haven't ranked today, what I need to chase up, etc.
Do you know what? For me, that's quite refreshing to hear. We spoke to a few journalists over the last couple of years of doing the podcast, and a lot of them, like, don't get me wrong, obviously everyone loves what they do. It's great, and it's talking about football is a dream for a lot of people. It's quite refreshing that you just say, yeah, sometimes you kind of lose a bit of a love for it. It's actually quite nice to hear that.
Yeah, it's one of those guys, and to be fair, like you can tell when I'll go out walking the dog tonight before the game after we finished. And I'll be listening to a podcast, and my podcast, I don't listen to very few other football podcasts. There's a few transfer ones, and a friend of mine's do a few, but I tend to listen to NFL and other things like that. I tend to try and switch off away from football. So, but yeah, I do spend. I'm lucky. I spend most of my day talking about football and writing about football, so I can't complain.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, it feels like it for us for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of leads on quite nicely because you have been in football for an awful long time now. So how did it all start, and how did the love of that start then? And then obviously getting you into the journalism side.
Yeah, my football. I was probably born into football in a lot of ways. My mum and dad were massive Middlesbrough fans. They met at the football themselves. I came along. They were such avid Middlesbrough fans at the time. I was named after Graeme, who's my mum's favourite player at the time.
Oh,
I was born next to Western Park. Yeah, I was born. That's why my name is spelled like the Scottish way. I was born next to Western Park, overlooking the ground. My first game was in the 1970s. Say that quietly. When I was about I was about 3. I was about 3 at the time, so I don't remember it. But yeah, it's been in my blood from an early age, and then obviously I was very much into playing. Realised in the teens I probably wasn't going to make it as a player, but and then looking how I could get into football the other way. Journalism was always something I liked. My best friend actually became a professional footballer, so that helped as well. And so yeah, I went to did a media studies. BTEC it was at the time, before it's all different things now. Did BTEC, and I did journalism and politics at Leeds University, and then started looking for a job, and I actually got very lucky. I was applying for jobs all around the country at the time, and I applied for some role at Opta back then. Opta was in its infancy then, and the same company had started a website called Planet Football at the time, and the guy running it saw my CV, rang me up, and it was just pure luck. And yes, I was part of the very first Planet Football team. Planet Football at the time was doing lots of club sites, which is a very unique thing at the time. And then managed to build up Planet Football to what it was. It beat the BBC one day. It became one of the country's most popular football websites. If you remember back in the day, before it is now. And it was bought by Sky to become their football operation. and that hence why I got into Sky.
Oh wow, Joe, I never knew that. I think I'm a little bit too young for that to sort of remember.
Yeah, it was the same company. It was a fantastic company. Pete Wilkinson at the time. He did. I can't remember that company did it. It was one of the big technology companies at the time. He bought Planet Football. He did Planet Football, and then he also bought a little known bookmakers called Surrey Sports at the time to go along with what he was doing, and that became Skybet.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we were all in part of the same building. So it was all in Harrogate actually, where we all originated from, and it went to Leeds before it came back to London. But yeah, I think it was Comcast or something that people was involved in, something like that. He wanted a big company, so he was a mega millionaire who sold the company and stuff. He did all sorts, and yeah, so he made a lot of money for us, and that's how I got into Sky through that, and through that business, it all went from there.
What sort of period would that have been at Sky? What sort of year was that?
So 99, early 2000s. Really, what would it have been?
That was like peak Middlesbrough when they
Yeah.
were at almost their best as well. wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, FreeSave was the company. He founded FreeSave. If you remember that massive company, and he sold that and did all these businesses. So it was, and we used to. So we became, before that, Sky's sporting stat operation wasn't really much of it, and we became their footballing operation. We helped make it what it is today. It's a bit more video based these days, but yeah, we founded the live service. We founded all the Twitter accounts. I used to manage all the foreign journalists at the time as well, being a news editor. And yeah, it was a tremendously exciting time. We used to cover the live games in the office as well. Yeah, it was a wonderful time. It was the guy who found Adam, my previous boss. He's at Manchester United now. He was a guy who used to run Club Call back in the day. So he was the best man. Yes, that's how I got into my transfers. It was a guy who used to run Club Call. He took me on there, and that's how I just got my love for transfers. I was always interested in transfers, obviously, but I say when you put these companies together, like the sporting operations and the online operations, because I'm very rare in the journalist world where I've really just about always done the online, which. It's interesting. Back in the day, I remember going to press conferences and getting thrown out by some of the journalists now who are now working at the Athletic and very much online journalists themselves. But yeah, the print media did not like us back in the day. That is safe to say.
Interesting. Okay.
I really want to ask who, but I'm going to wait until we finish recording.
It was like Simon Bird at the Mirror, George Colkin, who's now at the Athletic. It was quite, to be fair, it wasn't unusual, and it wasn't one-offs. It wasn't like they were just being. It was just they didn't know what the internet was at the time. Really, it was unheard of. Sky Sports was Sky Sports. It wasn't SkySports.com at the time, really, and nowadays most of the content is online, but back then it was totally unheard of. They didn't know whether we should be in the press conference with a TV company because we're from Sky Sports, but then we wanted to do the written stuff, and it was just it was an unusual experience for them. But now, ironically, a lot of the journalists are now online, totally themselves.
You were kind of the first of its kind then of like online journalism, getting that story and then being able to put it out live, because as you say, that's such a difference from writing in the paper and then it coming out kind of 11, 12 o'clock as the first draft, and then you have the morning. That must have been so different. Yeah,
and getting them used to it, and it was a total changing of the guard. Really, it took a long time to come to fruition, but yeah, and I've experienced both. After leaving Sky, I did a lot of work for the Sunday papers, which was an intriguing time. That's always a very worrying time, getting a story on the Monday, Tuesday, hoping no one runs that before it comes out on the Sunday. But that's when the Sunday papers were really big, not News of the World and the People, which I still love to this day. I still love reading the Sunday papers, but yeah, as we know from the internet, it's hard keeping anything quiet or. Not saying quite. if you try to get a story about a player, someone's going to have written something about someone somewhere, and it's impossible for, or virtually impossible for someone not to have got not wind of it, but someone guessed at something or someone said something about someone. But hey, I must admit, I don't sit and look on the internet. I don't particularly sit on X all day and Twitter. Obviously, I haven't got time to. So you would hope I'm not sitting in there all day. But yeah, it is what it is. You can become. I presume some people become obsessed with looking at what it is. But yeah, when you try to do your own thing, and obviously you have a look now and then, and you hope you type a name in and think, hope no one's got this story. And then
How did you kind of get the stories back in those days then? What would be kind of your source? And has it changed much now?
very, very, pretty similar. You know, when I first started off, it was agents, and obviously I said my best friend was a footballer at the time, so he put me in touch with a few people. It's very similar to now. Agents mainly, connections with the clubs. There's a lot more, like obviously the sporting director roles and people at clubs, media people within clubs. That's the strongest one, because even if you're really best friends with a player, even now I know a few players, but you know it's more a friendship there. You don't really talk about what's happening. I know there's a Premier League player I'm good friends with now, and I've heard a few whispers about him, and we're messaging. It becomes more joking, really. Like he's told me what's happening, but he said, "Oh, between me and you." So, oh, that's great. I can't use that. So yeah, and there is that. And a lot of journalists come at you. You become too close to a story, so that can happen. And yeah, and actually, you know, obviously, if I didn't think 20 years ago that I would still be here doing this now, but the young journals of today, a lot of my contacts, I speak to I've got about 40 good contacts who some have been speaking to since the first day I started, about very much so. But the young journalists I'm finding at the moment aren't really chasing the agents. Now I say, but you got to build up your loyalty. You got to build up to be trustworthy. I speak to my contacts every week of the year. I stay in contact with them. I don't just ring them in January and July.
Yeah.
And it is a slow burn. It's a slow process. You know, you got to build up a trust. You can't just ring someone. There was a time. There is a time now. You can ring up a foreign agent, ask them something, and do a quick story. But you know, you can't be in this. Well, you can be in for cheap headlines, but if it costs you a contact, I don't see any point in doing that. But I don't see any a lot of young journals who are banging down the doors of my contacts, certainly, which is pleasing to me. And
at least you're guarded, I suppose.
Yeah, it's good for me. So I think there was more of a battle back then, if I'm being honest to you guys. Like you say, I think there were the online things we were battling people, ringing people. Because I guess some places aren't just obsessed about transfers, but transfers are just so everywhere. You can see it from who'd have thought the Telegraph and the Times were so into transfers like they are now. It is a big thing, but yeah, I'm very lucky that it's gone that way. That transfers is still what it is, bigger than ever, arguably. You know,
I mean, Sky Sports have that dedicated segments and things now, don't they, for the transfer talk and their own sort of shows. And you know, many people are probably like myself and Will, we're pretty sort of average fans. You know, we don't necessarily have contacts to, you know, like yourself, to get the breaking story that Saka's going to sign a 25-year deal at Arsenal. He's going to be there forever, fingers crossed. So, you know, you look at things like the transfer centre and stuff like that constantly, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys do, yeah, and it's probably why, you know, it's getting stuff double sourced and sourced. It depends how big a story is. You know, it's judging, because there's nothing worse than having a story and you sit on it for days and weeks and it comes out and it's like, oh, I've had a couple of those already, so it's heartbreaking when that happens and you see someone, because that's why you see different people putting exclusives on bit, because you don't disparage people because you don't know when they've got that information, just because it's a tough one, just because you see someone saying something first, and I don't. As I hope you'll notice, I don't disparage anyone else. I don't go on and say, oh, I said this first or I did this. It's not really, I don't like to do that, and I don't really like to shoot anyone other stuff down. Everyone's got their own sources. You have to trust people do.
Absolutely.
And that's the way I go about it anyway. And yeah, I still love the thrill of the fight. I love fighting people for stories, getting there first and putting stuff out. And You know, I don't. That's the X generation now, where we look at the comments and stuff. I don't mind taking the abuse. I will say I don't. If people are listening, the only time I block anyone is if they swear at me, etc. But apart from that, you can come at me and I'll tell things. I don't have much time to look at the responses now, but I always enjoy the some of the lesser clubs who think I'm having a personal go at them, and I won't name the clubs, but it's like, you know, if I did have a remit and agenda, it'd be a bigger club than yours, sort of thing.
Bigger fish to
Yeah,
fry.
you wouldn't believe some of the size of clubs who think I've got an agenda against them. It's like, but yeah, so it's fascinating. I love it, guys. I do, and obviously coming on shows like this, it's a great opportunity to put things out there, explain things. I love doing the podcast and coming online and doing YouTube stuff, because I think there is more meat to the bone more often than not with stuff. You know, obviously we put the stories as I've been today and stuff, like for instance that Jerry Bowen one I did about Tottenham today, where they had an inquiry rejected. But I love the whole process. I do, guys. I can't tell a lie. I'm still doing it now. Hopefully I'll still be doing it in another 20 years. But yeah, I love the. There's nothing better than a big story break, and you get in there, and the buzz you get from that, and yeah, there's no denying that I do live for that.
So what's the biggest story you've covered then, or best story that sort of sticks in your mind?
Interestingly, right, guy, there was I'm with GRV now, which is HITC, and obviously HITC's had a relaunch, coming back to HITC like about what is it, 8 to 10 years ago. It was a pretty big site at the time, but then it went down more of a everything to everyone, did entertainment, and now it's trying to get back to being a purely transfer site, which I think we're starting to get there with it. But back in the day, I broke, and I was working for the newspapers at the time. I had the line about Rafa Benitez in Newcastle, and I must admit I'd given it to the people of the Sunday Mirror, and they didn't run it because we couldn't get a second source. Now it was pretty concrete, and then we ran that in HITC, and then obviously that ended up being one of the big exclusives that I had. At Sky, I think the biggest one I had was the Carlos Tevez and Mastrano. We broke first for West Ham.
No, you had that.
We got that first, yeah, on Sky online. We had a. And I've always had a pretty good South American network. I think it stemmed actually from the time when Middlesbrough, as you were saying, when Middlesbrough were being good, and I in depth went into the South American things, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, guys. Back in the day, FIFA registered agents, and this was one of my jobs when I first started. We used to have these huge folders about this big. My job was to go on FIFA. At the time, FIFA had a list of every single agent in the world. This was like 15 years ago, maybe even 20. And there was a phone number for every agent in the world.
Wow.
Back in the day. And I printed off these folders every year to make sure. And some of those contacts to this day I still speak to. But you can imagine now, but it's not on the FIFA website now with the telephone numbers anyway. Yeah, every mobile number was there. Hundreds of mobile telephone numbers were there. It was fascinating.
So what did you do? Collect them all? Did you collect them all up?
I just printed them all. I printed them all off with a folder in the office. So yeah, because obviously, and there wasn't a transfer market now where you would go online and see who someone's agent is. And it was good. It was back. Yeah, you could go and get an agent's number from FIFA if they had to be FIFA registered now. But yeah, wow. with all the laws around personal information, they probably wouldn't publish them now. But yeah, it used to be literally on FIFA.com on their agents list. There was a list of everyone's phone numbers. So that was a very good way of getting me the foot up when we first started.
I can imagine, yeah. Wow.
And I can't believe Tevez one. That's insane.
Yeah, to be fair, we ran that, and it was because at the time, because you have to remember is, although there were a lot of people in England didn't know who these players were. We knew, and I knew the agents who'd done a few Middlesbrough deals. Actually, I knew someone who turned. Obviously, Middlesbrough were very busy in South America at the time. I previously from Janino, Emerson, and all that, and I was told about it, and I must admit that story wasn't double sourced, but we went with it, and thankfully, it came out.
What's the feeling like? Is it excitement for you when you think, "Oh my God, I've got something massive here"?
It is, but surprisingly, it's as soon as it's gone, it's what next, you know? It's like, so for instance, I did that Jared Bourne one this morning. So obviously, thankfully, I managed to get that story, and it did it. And so but then when everyone's talking about it, I guess the Spurs fans now talking about it on the way home from work. I've already moved on from that. What's next? What's next? That Bourne story for me was over the weekend when I was getting it confirmed and sourced up. So it's a different time frame for me,
Right.
especially with that one because that was a failed inquiry, so it can't really go anywhere else anyway. Obviously, if there's a story where someone's made a bid and go on, it can have a bit extra. But yeah, it's again, if that was a transfer bid story, yeah, I've been moving on to saying is it been accepted, etc., and we move on from that.
Okay.
But
So,
yeah, you find yourself a step. You have to be that step ahead. You can't just rest on your laurels.
yeah. So generally, is it basically like anything that we see on media is kind of like 2-3 days behind then, roughly? Because obviously you're getting your sources confirming, and that's already happened.
Yeah, it can be. Obviously, when the window's open, slightly different because for instance, the Ben Johnson one, that's a good example. We did yesterday. We had sources at West Ham saying confirming. They were very confident he was going to sign literally today, but then that story within 12 hours, Ipswich came in and did it. So that was a really fast moving one. So that again, they can be really different. The bigger the story, obviously, you can have a bigger lead into it. You know, we'll get hints and suggestions. You know, I've got looking in front of me now my list. I've got about 30 stories, 30 links that I need. Some are further on than others. Chasing up, doing it. Some that you think I wish I'd done that earlier because it's just come out today, and yeah, you just got to prioritize. That's the way it is. Yeah, you can't start with a blank sheet of paper every morning. That's for sure.
Sounds like a bit like an addict would have. Like you have the buzz, and then you're like, right, what's next?
It is,
I wanna get
guys.
to that.
And as my wife will tell you, it's it's hard to take a holiday from because in my mind now I'm in a good place today because I think in my mind I can tell you what the top 10 Premier League teams in the top 10 teams in Premier League want. I can tell you off the top of my head what they want, what they're looking for, and I've got an idea about what they're looking at and who they're looking at. But if I take a day off, I was the day off Sunday. I went to play a bit of golf. But you find yourself catching up for those few hours, and it frustrates me. I don't like to be behind. I don't like to. I always like to be on top of knowing what every club wants and generally what every club are thinking. 'Cause I try and chase up with the clubs in house and just try and get in their minds of what they're thinking. So I like to think I'm never shocked by anything, but obviously shocked deals can. But in that, if Arsenal suddenly sign a striker tomorrow or a left back or a midfielder, I know that's Arsenal's main three priorities at the minute. It's them three positions. So I know probably not going to get caught out too much by Arsenal, for instance, on that one. So and I've got that situation. I like to have that one with every club, but that takes up a lot of your day to even chasing. It can take a few hours even like confirming. Oh yeah, that's where we're at, but it doesn't mean we're going to get a story out of it. And that's the people don't see that, but there can be some frustrating days where you spend all day on the phone and get very little for it, but a lot of work goes into it.
So are you like self-employed or are you employed? So are you like paid per story? So you could spend a day kind of looking at different things and then just get nothing and then be like, oh shit, I'm not gonna get paid for any of that.
No, I'm full contract. I've never really freelanced. I freelanced a little bit with the Sunday papers, but it was more, yeah. So I never enjoyed freelancing, but some people love it. No, I'm fully employed at GRV now as it was. I was fully employed at 90 Bin as well. So no, I like to have that little bit of stability. Yeah, and there's no, and there's no pressure on me. For instance, I don't have a quota. My bosses will confirm I don't have a quota, but I know what I need to do. I know what I need to produce, and so anything from 2 to 10 stories a day we're getting. So, but it's just look at the draw sometimes.
That's amazing. So this is obviously your busiest time of the year, I would imagine, and kind of January as well. Or is there bits in between that we maybe not think of that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm 365 days a year, and I actually enjoy it more out the window because I think getting those stories out the window is I'm good at. As I said, I keep in touch with my contacts on a weekly basis throughout the year. So it's producing those, as I hope you'll see on the socials when I do and when I post my stories. It's pretty much all year round, and so that's why. And even I've got a good scouting network across the world who I speak to, where you get different starts and people I speak to. That's probably a newer aspect of it, where I speak to a lot of scouts around the world, who, especially in South America, which is crucial, really, which is why I've got good contacts down there. But I keep in touch, say hello, nothing doing, which you have to do. I think you have to build up that trust. But it's all year round for me. But yeah, when you get these ones at the moment, there's more chasing stories up. So if you get told about a story from elsewhere, or if you're already in the middle of it, the officer want that chasing up. Is it true? Is it false? Are we running this? Are we not running this? And that can be, and that has its own complications and worries. Even if someone else is running something, you have to. For the way I do it, I still have to get a confirmation from my end. So, and there's always that worry for any story, actually, when you click send or whatever. You have to think that you're doing it right. You have to make sure your sources are good, and sometimes your sources are wrong. And I think that's what it's horrible when you do a story and then there's not really denial, because I'm not in the denial thing, and I don't think any journalist worth the weight is really into denying stories heavily. But yeah, as my contacts are quite matured with me, come with me. There's a few new ones as well, and I trust them and they trust me, and hey, the strike rate's pretty good.
Yeah, sounds it. That's amazing. I just want to move on to the sort of other side of bits and pieces that you do alongside the journalist bits and pieces. Is you also a host on Sirius XM? Is that right?
I'm not a host. I'm guest on that. I've been doing that for 20 years. On the football show. I moved from a football show actually onto the Grumpy Pundits, which is Rodney Marsh, actually, his show. Yeah, I go on there regularly. Had some Sirius broadcasts across America. Again, something I like to do. Something different. Obviously, doing a radio show. Fortunate to do it. Obviously, it's busy in transfer window. That's probably one every 2 weeks or so nowadays, when we get the chance. But yeah, I enjoy doing things like this, and to the other thing, all aspects of it. I think it's get a bit boring. But even though what I'm doing now with GRV is really interesting, it's not just HITC. They've got like 30 to 40 club sites, and part of my process now, I help the club guys out. I speak to club guys, do interviews with them. So I'm doing like 10 to 20 club interviews a week as well. They're doing what we're doing now, where I talk to the Arsenal Insider, which is a fantastic website, the Chelsea Chronicle. In-house, they've got, cover routes in the cop for Liverpool. It's great. It keeps me that keeps my mind sharp as well for every club as well.
So you get a lot of insight into those different things, into the clubs, what's going on. So that helps you with that part of it, and then also maybe some of the transfer stuff as well.
It does, yeah, because the question I've just done a bit piece. I've just come offline with the Arsenal Insider today, so you get it from that fan's point of view, where they're asking you questions about certain things. I forgot about the goalkeeper situation, so they're asking me about Rams, they're asking me about the left back and stuff, and yeah, it just refreshes things, yeah, from and I see it from a fan's point of view as well. So, and I'm able to give that bit of background as well. I can give that explanation as to why Kivior is more likely to stay than Zinchenko at the minute, stuff like that. Where it doesn't really make a story. I could sit and write, but it's to Arsenal fans. That's it. That's interesting, and you want to see that they'll do that on the Arsenal Insider rather than HITC, which is more of a national thing, and it's more of a quick, broad message.
Yeah, so you said anything about Arsenal, both Will and I are like, oh yeah, tell us more. Piqued our interest straight away.
It's interesting. They're having an interesting summer. I think Arsenal. It's more about quality than quantity for them. That's for sure.
Yeah. What do you make of some of the stuff that's been out recently then with kind of Chelsea, Everton, and I think it was Newcastle as well. So with the youth transfers that they've been having and PSR and kind of getting towards the end of June and that being the deadline.
I think PSR is horrible. I think the Premier League have shot themselves in the foot. I know other leagues around the world are laughing at them. I think it's a dangerous position to put them in. I'm not a fan of this policing thing. Obviously, they brought it in to try and police Newcastle and Manchester City. The big clubs are wanting it. You know, the old guards such as Arsenal, Tottenham, United. They want to guard against these sort of clubs, which I think is wrong. You know, we allowed Jack Steele to do it back in the day. So Jack Walker and Walker Steele, did back in the day. I disagree with it. I think you got to let teams do this. You know, I think the sliding doors moment was when Leicester won the league, and I think that the top six realised that they need to do something about it, and that's when they started pushing back on some of these rules. I totally disagree. I think you've got to let people spend what they spend. I think these rules are nonsense, and the sooner they are done away with, the better. You know, it's not done for good reasons. It's not done for the good of youth players in England. For instance, I think anyone who's come from the system should be free. They shouldn't count towards anything. Like Conor Gallagher at Chelsea or Bukayo Saka, his wages should not count to anything at Arsenal. He should be a free pass. You should be able to have as many players in your own squad as possible. If you want to pay him 500 grand a week, your prerogative, but it's free. It doesn't count on your balance sheet whatsoever, except the fact maybe his worth. You should be encouraged to. Arsenal should be encouraged to keep Reece Nelson and Emile Smith Rowe rather than think, Joe, what? We're more likely to sell Smith Rowe than Fabio Vieira purely because Smith Rowe's homegrown. Wait a minute, we should be keeping our homegrown player and selling the foreign player. But it's the other way around, and it's not right.
That's really interesting. Love that take. So honestly, I think you're one of the first people that we've sort of spoken to that have been totally against it, rather than a sort of regulator in between that.
Regulator for what? English football is not broken, and these are private companies. We don't have a problem when, you know, Ineos. What we're going to do? Police Ineos because they bought Manchester United, and they know what they're doing. It's like Stan Kroenke knows what he's doing at Arsenal. What we're going to like? Yeah. It's a nonsense. The Premier League is what it is. It stemmed from these big clubs being frightened, and they are going to regret it, the Premier League, I feel, because my prediction, I think La Liga is going to quickly overtake the Premier League. I think you'll see Erling Haaland in Spain within 2 years. They've already got Mbappe. La Liga will be the place to be in 3 or 4 years' time. You'll have Bellingham, Haaland, Mbappe, and the Premier League will be looking on with envious eyes, and it'll be their own fault. Because I can guarantee you Barcelona and Real Madrid will not be allowing such rules to come into pass in Spain.
Well, I was going to ask that. What is the alternative? Just to scrap it all and not have any financial implications for anyone at all?
No, but you can base it on the revenue of the revenue model, like UEFA do it like that way. But you know, if you got a massive like, it makes me. For instance, Arsenal have the Emirates thing. Oh, but you're allowed Emirates, but only to a certain level. Oh, but so City have Etihad. That's bad because it's a lot more than our Emirates deal. No, and like Saudi Arabia, Saudi Airlines, and Newcastle, which will come in. No, just because they're getting bigger backers, and money isn't all about football. I have a massive thing about recruitment, and the recruitment team was at 90 million. I hope to get it going again. Football, the most important thing in football is recruitment. It's not how much, it's doing it well. Yeah. You know, look at the best clubs in the world, Man City. Not because of the money they spend, but because they've got Soriano and Begiristan doing it off the pitch. Look at Aston Villa. Oh, suddenly they're coming well because they appointed Emery and Monchi. They've got the off-field stuff sorted out. Look at Arsenal. Got Edu off the pitch, sorting it out and being fantastic. And now they've got Arteta. But they're spending wisely. You know, that first season when Arteta and Edu when Edu first certainly came in, he signed Lukongo and a few of it. It was a disaster, but then they got it right. Football is about good recruitment. It's not about the richest clubs in the world. It really, and especially the Premier League isn't, but it's about good recruitment. I would do it on revenue and turnover. So yeah, Arsenal and Manchester United should have a bit of an advantage over Middlesbrough, say. Of course they should. You base that on your attendance and all that sort of thing. But then if Steve Gibson wants to put £500 million into Middlesbrough, that's his prerogative.
Yeah, be my guest. It's your club.
Yeah. It should be allowed. It should be allowed to. That doesn't mean that Steve Gibson could put £1 billion into Middlesbrough. We would never be as big as Arsenal anyway, no matter what Middlesbrough spend. But I think these top six have got to stop being a bit frightened of this and just believe in themselves a bit more.
Yeah.
Well, Chelsea have put £1 billion in, haven't they? And what have they got out of it?
Well, exactly. That doesn't. I think Chelsea. Exactly. And I suppose my thing about good recruitment. Well, it's about if they throw money at it, and they still need a good goalkeeper and a good centre forward. Yeah. But that's just about good. It's about good recruitment. It really is. And but going back to the Premier League, I think they've made an absolute car crash of this whole situation. It's ridiculous. The fact that these clubs are having to look at loopholes like this is a nonsense, and I think it's hurting the Premier League. It really is. People can't explain it and it's not right. Don't get me wrong. Kellyman, the guy who Chelsea signed from Villa, £20 million. We know what they're doing. Yeah. Of course we do. But the Premier League have put them in this position. They really have. I think it's a Premier League's making. But the clubs need to vote on proper regulations to put this right. But there's better ways to do this. And this PSR route is a nonsense to me. And the sooner we get rid of it, the better.
Do you think it will go? Do you think they will look at it and turn it off?
I think they'll go down the revenue route. I think that's the way they'll go down the UEFA, more like the UEFA and FIFA route, isn't it? And I think this will be the last year of PSR as we know it. Yeah. I think we'll go down that revenue model, and I think the big clubs will realise it suits the big clubs anyway. Unfortunately, you can't stop the likes of Newcastle and City fitting into that thing as well. I think the big clubs would like to have found a model that maybe bypass the likes of Newcastle and City, but you're not going to be able to.
No, and to be fair, look, the money that both those clubs have got, they will find the best lawyers to find a loophole around it anyway. Look at all the charges that are still looming over City. They've now sued the Premier League for various things. They're going to probably win, realistically, because they have more money than what the Premier League do. With the
and their argument is the Premier League rules are nonsense, and I would argue fair comment for some of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Why if Etihad want to give a certain amount of money to City, who would the Premier League say what? Who are they to say? It's like, suddenly I find it hard to believe. Suddenly if the Emirates bumped up Arsenal's deal to what Etihad are doing, I don't think they would stop Arsenal and the Emirates deal happening. They would just see that as market movement. But because suddenly City and Newcastle are doing it the other way, I think it's ruining it for the fans. A bit like VAR. I hope, there's some things that the Premier League, they've got right in the main from the very start of this whole Premier League era. They've got it right, but they're in danger now of messing this up. They really are. As I said to you, La Liga are not far behind, and La Liga are going to be getting some very big players here. And I think the Premier League need to be very careful because they're in danger of letting their crown slip.
You also mentioned our favourite subject there, VAR. We can't let you go without asking you what your thoughts are on that.
I think I couldn't. I feel I do a little podcast every week. We do the pre-match podcast, which is just a weekly prediction show. Yeah. And we went through it with Wolves about Wolves last season lost conservatively 10 points, less conservatively up to 15 points. And look at that league table where Wolves could have finished. Yeah. And that's why I brought that argument in. And because it was Wolves, we didn't really hear about it that much. But I think that we only need to look at the Euros now. This automated system, it's fantastic. Bring it in. I think if we got to debate anything, it's a nonsense. You may as well. What's the point in debating technology? We can just debate a real life referee situation. I think if this automated system is great, it's really quick, but it's not the way for the start of season, which is again a nonsense. Whatever money it would take to get ready for the start of season, they should be throwing the money at it. They really should be. And I think the VR argument hopefully will be wiped out by the automated system. Obviously the handballs and stuff, we'll have to see. I'll have to see what happens with that. I'm old-fashioned. I think it should be ball to hand rather than hand to ball, that sort of thing. I don't think it's brain surgery. but everything looks so much worse in slow motion, and I think that's a really bad thing. But hopefully we won't see that anymore, and we can just have the automated system, like the ball over the line. I think that's how it should be.
And you certainly noticed, haven't you, during the during the Euros? I think there's been 2 games where we've had all British officials, and two of those games has been the biggest cock-ups of decisions.
Yeah,
It's
and there's no need for it. It's that's the thing, guys. I think they need to. I think this. I don't agree with these upgrading yellows and reds. I think they should copy rugby league, where a player, they'll book him, and if they think something's dodgy, you put him on report, and then let the committee look after it afterwards. If it is worthy of a red card, for various things, I think they need to get the game flowing more. And VR's been the main culprit, obviously. But hey, I'd take the rest of the flack if we can get VR sorted out. Hey, the rest of it you probably accept.
Yeah, agree. What do you think for Borough's chances for next season then?
It's tough, the Championship. What people don't realise, when these clubs drop down from the Championship, it's so hard. You look even at the Leeds squad, which is still there. I took my son to Leeds versus Middlesbrough last season. When we went to Ellen Road, we narrowly lost, but it was like where Leeds were bringing Bamford and Donto off the bench. So, like I said, look, they're bringing an England national and an Italian national off the bench. We were bringing a youngster on. The gap is massive. It really is. But we reached this, guys. I think playoffs at best. Who came down? We got Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton. The best 3 from the championship, from our point of view, came down. Luton have kept Rod Redwood, so they should still be quite strong. Sheffield United, Wilder, they should be strong. Burnley is going to be a bit risky. You imagine 2 of those 3 are going to be involved. Leeds will be firm favourites in my eyes. I think they've been very sensible in keeping Farker in charge. I think they'll win the league. Canter Leeds, I really do. So yeah, playoffs. Hopefully playoffs. But we had a chance 2 years ago where Michael Carrick's first season, where to get promoted we had to beat. All we had to do, I say all we had to, no disrespect, but all we had to do was beat Coventry and Luton or in consecutive games to get promoted to the Premier League. We're never ever going to get an easier set of games than that to get promoted. No offense to them too. Middlesbrough are much bigger than both them teams. We should have beaten Coventry, and we should have beaten Luton if we got there. Yeah. We're never going to have a better chance than that, guys.
I do miss Middlesbrough from the Premier League. I think they were a proper. I'm thinking about them. You spoke about Juninho. That sort of team, I remember that so well, and the way they played. And I thought, this is a top team.
We were there. Gino, Emerson, my favourite player. We were a good team. And everyone forgets that we won the Carling Cup, which was great. But we qualified for the league. We qualified for the second run in Europe. The first run in Europe was via the Carling Cup, but we qualified through the league for the second year. We finished 6th, I think it was, when we beat Man City on the final day. So when we got to Eindhoven, that wasn't from the Carling Cup. That was from actually our league finish. We finished that was from our league finish that year, and we were great. I've seen Middlesbrough win in Rome. That was a great one when we beat Roma in Rome. I've been very lucky. I saw our first game in Europe was in Ostrava. I was there with my dad and my brother, so that was great doing that. I've seen a lot of firsts, obviously guys that say no, Arsenal's first game in Europe was probably 60s or 70s or whatever it was. Middlesbrough's first game was in the 2010s at Banek Ostrava, and I was there to see it. And days like we'll never forget.
Yeah, it's a nice little claim, isn't it? And that will live literally forever in your mind as well, won't it? Yeah,
I said my son now when I take him. To be fair, we've seen some big. I took him to Chelsea. We had the Chelsea semi-final, quarter-final last year. FA Cup quarter-final, wasn't it? We took him to that game. Oh, semi-final, sorry. Semi-final of the League Cup, wasn't it? We went to the Riverside to see that. But yeah, trying to tell him of the days when we were in Europe and we were beating Lazio and Roma and things like that. It was a magical time. But yeah, and then Ayresome Park. I still like to recount him of tales of Ayresome Park because I still miss Ayresome Park. I've never been a fan of the Riverside, these Meccano stadiums. I hark back to them days.
Joe, I think that's probably a nice way to end because I know that you've got a few bits to do before the football. So I don't want to leave you at all. So I will leave you with what's your prediction for the England game? Even though this will go out after the game.
Yes, you could be really wrong.
England will win 2-0. My prediction for England, though, before we get quickly, guys, I think he'll drop before we get France in the semis, which I think we might. I think he'll drop Foden and Saka before we get to the semis.
And
That's
Saka-
my, I don't want him to. I don't want him to, but that's my prediction. I think he'll drop them both.
Interesting.
Whoa.
Why Saka?
Why Saka?
Well, if it's a choice between Foden and Saka, you drop Saka because he's not as good as Foden. Firstly,
Whew.
Phil Foden's
yeah,
the best.
We'll
Phil
cut
Foden's
quick.
the best English player. Look at my. You can see. I'm a bit biased for Foden. As you can see on my X account, if you have a look at my X account, I've got a pinned tweet, which is probably one. 15 or 16, because David's actually a good story for you. You know, you talk about that, Ben. David Silver told me once that the best English player he trained with was a young boy called Phil Foden at the time. This was before Foden was even known. I was like, I'm not sure I believe you, but it turned out to be true.
Yeah.
That was a fascinating take. So yeah, that was a great story. But yeah, I just think Southgate will panic. I think he'll change it. I think Gareth, although he's a Middlesbrough legend, one of my favourite ever players, obviously he's not one of my favourite ever managers. I think he'll react to the media. I think he'll bring Palmer and Gordon in. I think he'll overreact. I don't think he'll ever drop Kane, but I think he'll just he'll make the wrong decisions. I don't think Foden and Saka should be dropped. Of course not. Who would in the right mind drop them to? But I think he'll change things. Yeah. We may hopefully we'll get to the semis. I'm not holding that much hope though, guys. I must admit.
Wow, fair enough. Well, that's a bit of a bombshell, that. But
I just think I can see him thinking he might do that. You know, I can just see him.
I can see it as well. Actually, now you've explained it.
I can see him scrambling around, thinking, "What do I need to do here? Let's bring Palmer and Gordon in." And the fact he's not. He used Gordon in the friendlies against Belgium and Brazil. He thought Gordon's in the real chance here. And then he's using Eze and Bowen. It's like Eze and Bowen. But do you really think Eze and Bowen are better than Gordon and Palmer? It's like, what do you think? If you really don't believe that, but he's picking. I think it's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy what he's doing. He should be Bellingham and Rice, Foden at 10, and I think he should add. Some people think Gordon. I'd start Palmer on the left and Saka on the right. But
I think we said the same. I think we said Palmer or Gordon. We're quite happy, but I quite like Eze. To be fair, I think he offers something different on that left. He's direct, and he's a bit of an unknown. Many teams are
come on, Ben. No, he's not in the same. If I offered Arsenal now, you can have Eze or Cole Palmer in your squad.
Yeah.
99 Arsenal fans are taking Cole Palmer.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah.
And the other one is in, so do you know what I mean? It's in Jared Bowen or Cole Palmer. Which one are you taking? Exactly, you're taking Cole Palmer. And that's the thing. Cole Palmer's just a better player. He was challenging Foden for Player of the Year.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. No, that's
it's an interesting one, guys. And we'll see where we go with Mr. Southgate. But unfortunately, I'd love him to be the world's best manager, with the Middlesbrough links. But unfortunately, not quite turned out that way. So that's my thing. I want quickly, guys. One thing was my solution to the England manager situation, and my mate Dean Jones actually stole this idea. But he said this on William Hill, and he rang me up and said, "Oh, I nicked your idea." I've been saying for years. So the way I would do the England manager situation, I would have a head of England coaching, like a Steve Holland, who I would use in the qualifiers for every competition. You have a committee maybe picking the squad. Steve Holland picks the team. Fine. Then at every major tournament, you give whoever's the best manager at the time, you give him a 1-month contract, £2 million deal with a £10 million bonus to win the tournament. So every single tournament, you have the best player on the planet. You have the best manager on the planet. Sorry. So this time around, we will either had Arteta, Ancelotti, or Pep being the head coach of England. Every major tournament, you have the best coach in the world for a month because he's not training them. He's just doing the tactics. England would. That's my idea for it. I think we should just have a head coach get us through the qualifiers, and then every major tournament we sit down, committee, right, who's the best manager in the world? We might have gone with Arteta. So right there, Mikel, there's England squad for a month. There's £2 million and £10 million if you win the tournament. He's not saying no to that.
No.
I don't think I would either. Thinking about it, I'd take Arteta as England manager.
That's a great solution. You have the great solution, guys. You have the continuity. You have the continuity of the head coach there all the time with the players.
Yeah. Well,
Great shout.
there you go, guys. Graham Bailey has solved English football's biggest ever problem. There we
It
go.
works. I think it works, guys. I think you need someone to inspire these players. And no offense to Gareth, but when he's sitting in the changing room and giving out his instructions, I imagine that Jude, Harry, and Phil are looking at each other, going, "What do we do now?" Whereas if that's Pep, Arteta, or Ancelotti talking to him, they're flying up the changing room and ready to go.
He's not going to be having a light bulb saying, "We fucking got this."
Yeah, he's not. He's not Mike whatever saying we're playing 4-4 effing 2, is he? So,
I wonder as well if we could use this for July the 4th with the Prime Minister as well. Similar sort of format, 'cause we can't seem to get a good one of them either.
Yeah, you never know, mate. But yeah, that's my. So I fixed the Premier League. I fixed England. There's not more I can give you guys.
No, guys, I hope you've really enjoyed today's episode. Graham, honestly, again, a massive thank you for coming on.
Thank you, appreciate that.
What an ending! What a fantastic ending. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next week.